Okay, a very good afternoon to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be welcoming you to our second roundtable with Camilla Bradley. My name is Brackett. I'm a sophomore at Trinity and I'm majoring in biomedical engineering. I'm also the social media chair for Trinity College Entrepreneurship Club. I would like to extend a very welcome to all of you, and we appreciate you taking your busy time to join us today. This event is organized by Trinity Entrepreneurial Network. As we all know, the Bantam spirit has always been an entrepreneurial one. Within our alumni body, we're proud to have many successful and aspiring entrepreneurs of all ages and in every career and field. The Trinity Entrepreneurial Network provides a dedicated space for Trinity entrepreneurs to connect with each other and with current students. For more information, please contact Melissa Ronzino Regan, and please check the chat for Melissa's email address. Before we start our our presentation, I have a few housekeeping notes and announcements to make before we begin the program. So during Camilla's presentation, we recommend that you set your view to speaker view and then switch to gallery view for our Q&A session. Please make sure that you're muted throughout Melissa's presentation. Today's program is a part of the monthly series Roundtable Conversation with Trinity entrepreneurs on topics of interest of fellow entrepreneurs. We're pleased to welcome the members of the Student Entrepreneurship Club and hope you will complete your profile on the Bantam Career Network to join the group specifically created to provide space for alumni and students to post questions and seek advice. We will record this program. Please feel free to use the chat to ask questions or offer tasks throughout the presentation. I'm gonna announce the coming events that are organized by Trinity Entrepreneur Network. The next program for Trinity Entrepreneur Network is gonna be January 11. We're gonna have a roundtable with Chris Alia, class of 96, on how to build your startup team. February 7, we're gonna have a roundtable with Russell Fugit, class of 01, on how to turn your values into opportunity. March 10th, we're gonna have a roundtable with Michelle Monti, class of 89, on how on creating effective content to promote your business. And again, in March, the time and date is to be decided, but we're gonna have a Women Entrepreneurs Alumni Panel. If you have any ideas or for other topics or would like to recommend a speaker or even volunteer yourself, please reach out to Melissa. And finally, we hope you will share your feedback in our post-event survey that you will receive in an email tomorrow. We're delighted to have Camilla Bradley, class of 99, here with us today. Camilla Bradley is the founder, CEO, and owner of CK Bradley. Please join me in welcoming her.
All right, I'm good to go. Thank you so much, Melissa and Etsa, for that wonderful introduction and for having me on this. I'm so flattered, and I love talking about myself. No, I love talking about entrepreneurship and what I've been fortunate enough to be able to do for, I mean, literally since my senior year, 98, 99 at Trinity. And I give so much grateful thanks to my education there and actually the student body for actually leading me to where I am today. So my topic is how to bring your product to market and keep it there. Now, whether I stay on topic or go off of it a little bit, I can't promise one way or the other. I will try to stay focused. I was just telling Etsub and Melissa that I do very well answering questions. Well, I think I do. We'll see what the questions are in order to find out. But I'll just give you a little background and some things that I really thought about when I think about that overall scope. So one question that really came up is, you know, you have your product, your idea, or whatever it is that you want to do. For me, I laid in my bed, we were just discussing, it was in Jarvis, and I had this loft built in there, and it was my senior year. And Trinity's campus was really the inspiration for what I started doing. I'd had a job my senior year in New York City in an architecture firm, and architecture was sort of, I did art history major, and architecture was my sort of where I thought I'd go. Maybe I'd go to architecture school. And I laid in bed and I was like, God, I just want to work for myself. I mean, especially after a summer doing a New York City internship, I got paid really well, but God, it was grueling. And I just kept every night, whether it be a school night or a weekend night, whatever hour of the night, I was like, how can I work for myself? How can I work for myself? And I was really raised by an entrepreneur. I mean, my dad at an early age, you know, if I was like, hey, I really want these magazines other people are getting, you know, from their parents. And my dad was like, why don't you make your own magazine? And I was like, okay. So he'd buy a printer and I'd make my own magazine. So it was really sort of in my blood. And here I was at Trinity, and I was like around campus, and one of the important things about what you guys are figuring out or have done or will be doing is, what is your inspiration? What is it that you are passionate about that isn't out there that could be done better? You know, what's the differentiator of the idea, the product, the concept, the business, right? And is it that it's not out there? Is it that you can do it more cheaply? Is it that you can do it better? Is there a connection? You know, did you lose something important in your life or a person in your life, and you want to dedicate something that you can make to that, right? So what is it that makes your idea for this business or thing different? And so much of that leads into how you'll market it, how you'll bring the product to market, and how you'll keep it there. Because the story behind these ideas and these businesses, I mean, this is just my perspective, but that's what makes it sing. That's what makes it sell. That's what makes it have legs. I'll never forget, Ralph Lauren was a friend of my father's, and when I started my business in my senior year, and I was like, I'm sewing ribbon belts. And I'll tell you, actually, for those of you who don't know what I started at Trinity, Ralph Lauren told me, he's like, Camilla, where there's passion, there's success. And I was like, huh? He goes, well, don't make something because somebody else tells you to make it. You know, don't make something because you're passionate about it. If you're passionate about it, every single piece of that, whether it's, you know, a new cell phone case or an app on your phone, or a magazine you want to make, or a shirt or a necklace, right? If you have like passion behind it, it'll be successful. So I keep that in mind every day when I'm doing something. And very often there are times when I will make something because somebody's like, you'll sell 1 million of these if you make it. I'm like, okay, like Calvin Klein and his underwear, right? I don't think he's that passionate about his BVDs, his underwear, but God, he makes a ton of money, and the money allows him to do the things he really loves. So there's a little give and take there. So at Trinity, what did I do? I actually would walk the cemetery every day, and I dreamed of what I was going to do. And I came back from this summer in New York City, and I found that, you know, preppy was in on campus, and preppy was in on all these sort of schools like Trinity, and people just wore Brooks Brothers and polo shirts and whatever. And I was like, you know what? These are so boring. Like, everybody on campus looked the same. And I bet those of you who are actually at Trinity right now can look across campus and be like, everybody has the same bag. Everybody has the same shoes, the jeans. You know, it's a very, I could be wrong, but I feel like there's a uniform that you sort of acquire in high school and in college, in certain colleges. And sometimes it's fun to be part of that. And then some people don't want to be part of that. For me, I needed to be part of it in order to reject it. And so it was sort of like, I knew this uniform, but God, it was pretty boring and everybody looked like everybody else. So what could I do to make it more fun? I knew how to sew. So I was in the hall at Trinity, and I guess, yeah, we call it the hall. And I had a sewing machine there that my roommate's mother had given me. And I just started sewing. I had tons of ribbon that I had gotten off the streets of New York City. And I just started sewing belts. So instead of these girls wearing, you know, Brooks Brothers belts, I'd have this crazy colored belt, and they'd be like, oh my God, where'd you get that? And I'm like, and I gave them a name of my dad's company from the 50s when he started a tie company at Princeton. I was like, oh, it's Tally Ho. And they're like, Tally Ho, like, where can I get it? And so, you know, therein lies the idea. There's a demand for something that I have, or something that I'm wearing. You know, even if I gotten the belt in Africa or in Germany and traveling, and somebody was like, where'd you get that? You know, for an entrepreneur, it's like, oh, you're interested in that? Well, let me just see, like, can I make this? So sure enough, I used all these labels from the 1950s that my dad had left over from his ties. And I started hot gluing them in the back of these belts that I would sew all night long at the hall. And I didn't think anybody would buy anything that I personally made. Times have changed, right? I mean, there's Etsy out there. Everybody loves a handmade product. But in 1999 and 1998, I was pretty sure people wanted something that was legitimate. So I sort of hid, it was a different label, and I started making many of them. And then I told people I was the rep. So there was a little bit of storytelling in there, a little bit of faking till you make it, I guess. But I couldn't hide. People would come into the hall and they'd see me sewing these ribbons and like hot gluing the labels on. So, and they didn't mind. So there, you know, you're listening to your audience, and an entrepreneur needs to listen and hear feedback. Like, what are people saying? Guess what? They loved that I was making them. And they also loved that they could say, hey, will you do this with red and this with turtles and this with tennis rackets and this? And I was like, sure. So they were part of the creative process, which is so accessible now with Instagram. You know, you can post something and say, which color do you like most? And I used to do that a lot when I was designing. There are a bunch of prints behind me. When I do prints, I'll say, which colorway do you like? Or which print do you like the most? And all that engagement, there was engagement before Instagram. So 99, there was barely email, right? There was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, but there were different versions of engagement. So I had it on the Trinity campus. And before you knew it, everybody'd be walking down the long walk and lifting up their shirts, showing me these belts. And I was like, wow, I've got an idea. So another level of being an entrepreneur is, and I actually see this with a lot of people that do jewelry and stationery, it's like, I wanted to grow. I didn't just want this to be a, you know, me sewing for the rest of my life in the hall or my apartment in New York City. I wanted it to grow. So I had to find a sewer. And with that, you've also got to find, you know, how does it work? How much can you charge? How can you still make money? So I found a sewer. Next thing you know, I was making, you know, these by the dozen as opposed, or, you know, by the 20s, 20 of this, 20 of that. And it sort of brings me to the next really fun pivoting point, that so much of the things that we read about now with building and growing a business, especially with social media, we were all doing before there was social media, right? It was grassroots marketing and it was just intuitive. It's been made a lot easier. So anybody with an idea now it's a lot easier. However, there's a lot more competition. So you sort of get, you know, it evens out. So what did I have at Trinity that was so important? I had this group of people. If you guys have ever read The Tipping Point, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell wrote it. It is so worth a read. He basically explains how ideas spread like epidemics. And there's a few elements that need to come together to create a point of critical mass, in which case things explode. So like, when does something catch on? You know, you've all seen what a viral video does, and all of a sudden, boom, everybody wants the Snuggie or whatever the thing is. I had that before social media with Trinity. Trinity gave me these connectors, these students that have massive networks of friends, with friends at other schools, friends at home. And they would go home or they would go off to their summers, wherever they went. And guess what? They were wearing my belt. So before I knew it, I had reps. Basically, Trinity students became my reps, rep just short for representative, all around the country. And stores started calling in. And you've also got Malcolm Gladwell in The Tipping Point also talks about salesmen. And those are the kind of people that just boast about the ideas that they have and they love, and their positive energy is totally contagious. You see these people now on Instagram, right? Where you're following somebody because every day she's like, oh, I just drank this smoothie and it's amazing. And you're like, oh my God, I want it. Click, buy. I had that at Trinity. I had these girls that would walk around. I mean, I could list their names. Some of them were at Tried Out. Some of them were affiliated with nothing, but boy, whatever they said, everybody wanted. So those were two really important things that brought my product to market. And from there, Trinity really gave me those assets and a big boost. So other ways to bring a product to market. I've started 3 or 4 businesses since 99. And 3 of them are related to CK Bradley. One of them I just started during COVID. But the next business I started in 2010 was called Après, like après ski. It was called Après by CK Bradley. And this is where I had an idea, and the idea was retro ski clothes. Like, everybody to me looks like a boy on the ski slopes. And I was like, God, like, I just want to wear something that makes me look like a girl, like a woman, you know, whether I can ski well or not, like, I want to look good. And I was a little ahead of my time. The style that's out there right now is exactly what I designed in 2010 or 11. Let me see. Here, I have examples of it. Little, like, you see, like, fun retro ski suits. So it was, whenever you have a really good idea that's not out there, like in both times, round 1 at Trinity, the ribbon belt, nobody was doing what I was doing. So it was a really easy market to tap. Same thing in 2010. Nobody was making retro ski clothes. The only thing people were doing were buying retro ski clothes on eBay. So that makes the idea very easy to I don't want to say bring it to market, because it's not necessarily, you might not have the buyer, right? Because it's so maybe outlandish, like my 70s ski wear was, but you definitely have a story, and it's definitely easy to be noticed, right? So it's easy to have people that are just hooked on what you're doing. The difference in 2010 was all of a sudden I was in a new era with Instagram and Facebook, and I had to sort of learn that aspect of the business. So a lot of what I'm familiar with when I'm thinking entrepreneurship and bringing and building a business, it's a good story. Like, what story is there to tell about what you're doing? And I see so many success stories, even with like Tom's shoes. You know, his story is that he went someplace and I could be wrong, but he found a factory and he realized that he could give 1 pair of shoes for every shoe you buy. So it's really helping another country, another group of people. And in doing so, it really spread, right? Because as people, as human beings, we love to think we're doing good, at least I hope. And I think that's part of the success story, was actually connecting to a charity, an organization that helps other people. So that's another thing that a lot of people, I think, have a lot of success with, is when they partner with something that does good for others. And it's like a multiple marketing platform. So with Après by CK Bradley, with the ski clothes, we had a really good story. We lived in an Airstream. We had 2 dogs, 2 girls on the road, and we went to every ski resort that I could muster on the West Coast. And the marketing tactics, like, not everybody comes up with these silly things, but this is just how I think. I'm like, listen, we need to park this Airstream that has Après all over it, filled with retro ski gear, in the middle of Aspen, like on the main thoroughfare where there's definitely like signs all over the place, no parking, no standing, no anything. I'm like, we need to be there, because if we're there, everybody's going to know we're here, right? So what do? I did a few things. One, I made 2 keys for my Suburban so that I could leave the engine running in the car, pretend I locked my keys out of it, and then lock the doors, get out, and then be like, sorry, officer, I can't move my car. It's running. I'm calling a tow truck, or I'm calling a locksmith to open it up for me. So that bought me 45 minutes to an hour of my car sitting in the most prime spot in Aspen. Of course, I had a second set of keys, but they didn't need to know that. And turns out then we were on the front page of the news in Aspen. So it's sort of, you know, there are different kinds of entrepreneurs. There are ones that, you know, I guess I like to get noticed. I like to do things that are a little irreverent. I don't know. They say that, you know, there are a lot of great quotes about that. If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. It's not that you have to do that, but that's what's in my blood, I guess. And some people are rolling over that I'm even saying that. But so, and the other thing we did was we let the air out of our tires. So when we went to Telluride or Sun Valley or other ski resorts, Vail, we'd let the air out of our tire. I had a pump in the back, but I might as well just wait an hour and a half for a tow truck to come and fill me up with air while me and my friend and the two dogs were walking around in our ski suits with the car right in the middle of the, the thoroughfare. So it's kind of constantly thinking out of the box. Like, how do you keep, that's bringing your product to the market. And that's, a good story and how to get people talking about it. Right. So being disruptive for me was a big part of that. We didn't make a lot of money with that après line. It really was ahead of its time. It is meant for right now. And actually it is coming out next year. This coming fall, it will be in the marketplace. So I'm very, very excited. So we didn't make any money. In fact, we lost a lot of money, but there's no such thing as failing. There's only learning from the mistakes and getting better for the next time. Like, you're just getting smarter along the way. All the failures in that business, I can look back at and laugh. We really did not make any money. And they made my next round of CK Bradley. So CK Bradley went to sleep. The CK Bradley evolved from ribbon belts into dresses. And we were in about 400 boutiques across the country from 1999 to 2010. Then it sort of hibernated. I closed stores in New York City and closed the wholesale and opened up the ski line to sort of travel out west. Then that really lost money. And I've never borrowed, in general, I've never borrowed money. Like, I always make a pom-pom hat, sell it for, hopefully 4 times what I made it for, and then take that 3 times money and, make 4 more pom-pom hats. So it's really been a labor of love, but a slow growing process. There are a lot better ways to do it than that, I'm sure, but this was at least safe and I never owed anybody any money. The skiing is an exception. So then my third round was doing CK Bradley again, and that it came back in 2015, I think. And the only reason I brought back CK Bradley as an entrepreneur was I couldn't do something that I thought was being done well by somebody else. Now, those of you with ideas out there might actually be like, well, that's exactly, I know a lot of people that see what somebody else is doing and are like, you know what, I can market that better. I can make that shirt cheaper. I can do that. There's some differentiator that means you could take somebody else's idea and do it better, differently, more effectively. For me, that doesn't work. Like, in order for me to function and wake up and love what I do, it's that I am doing something different than somebody else. And that is just a product of my DNA. So what was I doing differently than somebody else? I didn't want to buy anybody else's clothes. Like, I was like, I gotta do this again. So sure enough, I had to start designing clothing. I actually have a picture of my first sketch here. Sorry, guys. This is how bad my sketches are. When I decided, I had two kids and I was like, it's time. I've got to start designing again. And this is it. And this is still how I draw. And it still gets produced. It's amazing. So how to keep it going? I'd say that's what I'm doing right now, right? I've launched 2 versions of CK Bradley. This is now the 3rd. Constantly being able to evolve, learn, and question my business decision has so much to do with staying alive. This round, I am much more financially mindful. The first round, right out of college, I was just trying to put a beer pong table in the back of my store in New York City so everybody could come there after work and play. And making money, luckily it happened because I had good margins, but God, I was very lucky that we stayed alive for 10 years without the concern financially. I had no financial help. People would tell me, you don't have a line of credit. I'm like, what's that? So this time around, I'm a little more savvy. Luckily, I married an entrepreneur and he is much more savvy. So I have sort of a creative brain now, and then I've got a financial brain. So the 2 of those are a really important thing. A lot of times people will have partnerships and they'll have the financial person and they'll have the creative person, or they'll have the marketing person and the designer, right? And that marriage is really beautiful. So how to keep it going? I've got now my brain is sort of cut in two. I'd say on a day-to-day basis, I spend like 75% of my time doing the financial stuff and 25% of my time doing creative or marketing ideas or that sort of thing, which I wish it was flipped, and maybe it will be. But the thing to keep it going, I think, one thing I think is crucial in building a business, growing a business, and keeping it afloat is it's kind of like you're surfing and you're on, and then the wave moves and you've got to move your body to adjust for the wave coming or what's around the bend, constantly being flexible, seeing the market as it changes. Nothing has ever changed as quickly as it changes today with social media. If 10 years ago you told, I mean, even with reels and stories, like those are just, I don't know, a year new, 2 years new. I mean, it's maybe less, right? So all these new marketing tools are constantly being thrown at us. And it's like, guess what? Now I don't want to put ads in newspapers because all you want to do is pay influencers to wear your stuff. I'm actually not a huge fan of that because I just want my influencers to be like you and not people that I pay to wear the stuff. That goes against my DNA again, but maybe I need to get on board. So when I think of something, how my business has evolved from round one coming out of Trinity to round three right now, back in the day, if you'd asked me between 2001 or 2000 and 2010, you know, why don't you make white tops or jeans or basic pants? And I'd be like, because 10 other companies make amazing basics and amazing pants. Why would I ever mess with that? I don't need to perfect something that's already perfected. Now I change my perspective now because as a really busy mom, 2 kids, a husband, so call that 3 kids, a dog, you know, 11 or so employees, 2 businesses, I don't have time. If you were to talk to another busy CEO of, let's say, a much more successful, much bigger company and ask them what is the number one thing that they might brag about or the one thing that they would love more in their life, I bet you it would be time. I think we've been robbed of time because of our devices, because we don't ever have downtime. You know, you never sit and just look at a newspaper or talk to the person next to you when you're waiting for your Japanese food or Chinese food at the restaurant, or when you're waiting for a bus, or when you're waiting for your class to start. What are we doing? We're all on our phones. We're all looking. The stimulation is extreme. So our minds, our bodies are not getting like the rest that they need. I actually do a really good job of not looking at my phone. I really dislike it. But part of me is addicted to it. So there's like a half and half thing going on. So with that, time is the most valuable commodity, and yet it's not buyable. You can't buy time, right? So for me, to circle back to the question of how I would do things differently, when somebody had said, you know, why don't you design basics? And I'm like, why would I do that? Somebody else does a great job. Now, oh God, I'll design basics all day long because it's a time saver for people who are shopping. If I can buy everything I need on one site, now I don't mean like dog bowls and leashes and kid clothes and all that stuff, but basically as a woman who's designing clothes for women, if I can go on one site and buy the most amazing shoe and sock and top and festive top and dress, like I'd love to have just 2 or 3 places I go instead of 30. It's a time saver. And I'd love somebody to curate it for me. So if there's one thing that we're sort of evolving into, I say, with the times, is that more of a curated thing, selling other people's things curated by us. I've got fabulous tastemakers here. Genevieve has been with me for like on and off for 20 years. And she started in wholesale and now she's doing styling and curating and photo shoots. She's doing a lot of things. So it's really fun to have a group of really fabulous people that can also do different things. So now as times are changing, time is really a much more valuable commodity. Now I would offer basics, right? So we're sort of, how do you keep it going? And you keep it going by changing, by seeing what's happening and by changing with the change and evolving as you go. So, you have an idea, maybe you have a passion, hopefully you have a story behind it. Maybe you get it out there with some other people, your classmates, people you meet, influencers on Instagram, social media accounts, whatever it is. Doing something disruptive that gains attention can set you apart. The last photo shoot we did actually in Newport, we set up a Christmas tree in the middle of the street and decorated it in the middle of the street with buses and traffic. Now, I don't recommend this, but this is like how we operate here. If people didn't know us before the photo shoot, they definitely knew us now. They know us now because we stopped traffic. And then finally, keeping it there, like constantly questioning your ideas, your choices. Be ready to change directions quickly if the business needs that. There's certain stories like J. Crew. They were huge when I was in high school and the beginning of Trinity. And then all of a sudden they died out. And when Mickey Drexler was hired to come back and see why, J. Crew was bankrupt and just dying, it was like they got rid of the catalog because the catalog seemed like an archaic dinosaur next to the internet. But guess what? People missed that. There was nostalgia there. So there are things that you need to, keep up with the times, but also maintaining your DNA from the beginning is such an important, maintain your story. J. Crew's story is coupled with a catalog. So don't lose everything that made people love you in the beginning. And then ultimately, don't get discouraged. When one door closes, another one always opens. And it's very seldom that things happen exactly as you picture them. So if there's one thing COVID has really done for a mass generation of people, children especially, and college age kids as well, you guys and beyond, is teach you that you don't actually know what's going to happen tomorrow. And you have to be willing to be flexible and change and know that you can expect the unexpected, and that you have to be prepared for the unexpected tomorrow. I think it's an unfortunate, but I see things always positively. So in a positive light, that's an asset that we know that we can change with whatever we're given tomorrow. Same thing in a business. Like when it throws you, I remember the first pom-pom hat I ever made to start the business in 2015. It was like this high, way too long. It flopped back like this. And I was like, oh my God, I look like Droopy on the Smurfs. Like, how are we ever going to sell these? Guess what? It was a style, and we wore them and they were flat back, and all the college kids in Newport were like, oh my God, that hat's so cool. I was like, what? It's so bad. Go with it, flow with it. Mistakes can actually be opportunities. Mistakes can be actually the best thing that ever happened to you. So just don't get discouraged. It's a matter of how you receive the change or the mistake or what you consider a failure, which is not a failure, and you bounce with it. And that's what differentiates a successful entrepreneur, I think, from one that gives up. Yes. Someone once said to me that confusion, this is actually a quote by somebody, and I wish I remember who said it. Confusion is the welcome mat at the door of creativity. So it's okay to be confused. It's okay not to know what to do next. Sleep on it and just welcome the creativity that comes from it. The only people who fail are the ones that don't keep trying. So I don't know if that had anything to do with my topic, but there you go.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a couple of questions, and everyone, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions. My first question is when you start this business, you're a senior at Trinity, right? And I believe there are a couple of students in the audience, and I think this can be their questions as well. As a senior at Trinity, you must be busy with your schoolwork, social life, senior projects, files, everything. So how do you manage to be an entrepreneur and a senior at Trinity? How do you manage that?
Oh, so this is a great question, and it goes for a lot of other things in life, I think. Mm-hmm. When you're passionate about something, it's not work. You just get it done. I didn't get tired. It was like you had this newfound energy, the passion. Just when you're excited about something, the feel about when you're excited about something, you're about to go on a trip, you might stay up until 2 a.m. packing, right? And you're still just filled with energy. For me, it was so excited to have the campus receive what I was making so well. I was making money. I was sewing while I was socializing in the hall. I mean, it was just passion. So how do you juggle it? Same thing now with kids, right? It's like, I'm so passionate about it. I love what I do. Does it feel like I'm working sometimes? God, yes. But for the majority of the time, being an entrepreneur, the greatest gift you get is the flexibility to, well, I can say this, the flexibility to design your own time. But I mean, you can be twice as busy as somebody that has a 9-to-5 job, right? But if you love what you're doing, and that's probably the case if you're an entrepreneur, and if it isn't, start doing something else, right? But it doesn't seem like work. So for me, it was just, Trinity was my like, I got to just market. It was a dream. So that didn't affect me.
Okay. Also when you started, like, doing, like, when you started this business, social media, like, or marketing on social media wasn't really a thing. So you used your connection with your friends and, like, students at Trinity, right? But like, with current social media influence and everything going on, what's the best way for you to market or bring your products to market?
I mean, it's Instagram and Facebook, hands down. Instagram allows me, so whether it's placing ads on them, which we do, or the social media aspect, which is much more brand awareness, both of them are so important because you can sort of get the personality of your brand out on your social media, and then the ads are they're incredible what you can do with Facebook ads, and they know it, which is a problem because they're really cornering the market. We place some ads on Google, which are ones that you might see when you're going through the internet and not on Facebook, right? But so much of us are on Facebook and Instagram all the time that, I mean, I know even me, that's how I'll do shopping on Instagram, right? They know what I like. So Instagram is by far the most valuable, I'd say. Direct marketing, meaning like the people we already have emails from versus the people that we gain. We actually have probably 65% of our sales come from new people. Like this entire past year, 65% or 70% were new customers, and they were all gotten from Facebook and Instagram.
Interesting. There's a question from the chat. How do you take that jump from creating your product or idea yourself to mass producing it?
So that's a lot of, it depends what field you're in, right? So I'm in fashion. For me, when I started at Trinity, I knew I needed to find a sewer. So, I mean, a lot of it is logic, right? For a sewer, I needed to find somebody who could sew. Seamstresses, I found a sail maker. And I knew a sail maker could do a lot of, and they weren't that busy. So I drove to Essex, Connecticut, where somebody would sew these belts and bags for me. And then once I came to New York and I started getting orders for hundreds, I mean, I think in the second year I sold 1 million belts. It was like, it went just, Trinity's, as my marketing was out of control. Then I found someplace downtown in New York, but that was pre-internet. That was pre-Alibaba. I would say Alibaba is one of the most incredible sources. It's actually how we found our factories now without traveling overseas to India and South Korea and China. Alibaba, you can find whether you're trying to make a belt buckle or a new scissor or a bamboo pen, or a dress or a ski jacket or, a really cool leather bag. You can do it all on Alibaba. Highly recommended. Just search what you want, and then you start having people make you samples. And then, it's usually good, I'd say having three different people, factories, be it make samples, and that way you really have something to compare, like quality, price, and speed, right? Like India, when you say I need it next week, they're like, oh yeah, next week, and you get it in 2 months, but 2 months to them is next week. And in China, when you say next week, you get it next week. So they're different languages that you get to learn, which is great.
Okay, we have another question. Like, over the years, as there has been a great emphasis on using sustainable materials for clothing, have you changed the way you source the fabrics? If so, what do you look for? Like less water usage, or like what?
Okay, great question. So we absolutely have. it hasn't been, that's a great marketing differentiator, I'd say. If you're making a product, like let's just say somebody's like, oh, I love the shirt CK Bradley makes, but I wish they were made out of bamboo, right? So bamboo is actually an amazing, or hemp, an amazing, they make really soft material. It hasn't been my focus. Other things have, and I can get to that, but you can source all these things, and that would be a differentiator for that person, that they're making sustainable clothing, right? For me, when you look at it, to me, I think our goods are such good quality that you're never going to need to throw them out. Like, hopefully you love the things you buy from me so much that you're actually passing it down to your kids. Many of our customers will be like, oh my God, I got married in the dress, or and then they'll show me all their CK Bradley things that they just can't throw out. To me, that's in the quality and the inspiration of the product. And like the things I make tend to be things people wear and like have fun experiences in, right? Like, not if I'm making basics, but hopefully my basic is good enough that you just keep it forever. And in that, it's sustainable. It's not disposable. It's not going to rip. It's not going to fall apart the next year. It's not going to be out of fashion. So it's actually, if you just look at the word sustainable in a different way, if my stuff never goes out of fashion, which it doesn't, like there's nothing, sometimes I'll hit a trend, but it's not my goal to be trendy. In fact, I want to know what the trends are, so I stay away from them, because I never want to be selling a square-toed shoe when that goes out of style, because then it's obvious. Like, to me, sustainability is designing clothing that you'll pass down, and it's like legacy clothing, stuff you never want to get rid of, right? And then that, it's done its job.
Also, what are the sustainable water efficient fabrics you think are just as good as shirting quality fabric?
Shirting quality?
Yeah, what are, like, the sustainable water efficient fabrics you think are just as good as shirting quality fabric?
Okay, is it shirting quality, like shirt?
Yeah, the shirt. Yeah, shirt.
Okay. All right. So I actually am not an expert. This is something that I am not, I might know more than the person asking the question, but this is not my forte. I would say that cotton, cotton is like one of our number one materials, and people are really looking for cotton now, which is wonderful, because there was a time there when everything was made of this sort of a jersey stretch material, which is synthetic. To me, I don't know a replacement for cotton. I just know that bamboo and hemp make beautiful stretch fabrics.
Also, another question, like, what are the challenges that you have faced as a female entrepreneur?
It's an interesting thing, and we touched on this once before. I don't feel like I have had any challenges as a female entrepreneur. A lot of it, this is something I didn't mention in the beginning. When I started my business, I really faked it. Like, I pretended, my dad sort of taught me this. He's like, well, you don't want people to, when you're buying things from big factories, they're going to say, how long have you been in business? And I'm like, 1 year. And they're like, no, we don't want to sell to you. Whether I'm female or male, I don't think it mattered. But he said, you should have a few names. You should have head of marketing. You should have sales. You should have receivables. You should have your accountant. So all of a sudden I started making up names of the people that worked at the company. Of course, it was only me. And I had a bunch of different emails, and I had a bunch of different business cards. And it was really helpful when I started to appear bigger than I actually was. I'm sure companies do this left and right. When they have a marketing department and they pretend this, it's all in appearances, right? So in starting your business, it's probably helpful to have a story for the people you're going to purchase from, with, how many, they're speaking to somebody else when it comes to receivables versus production versus buying. I don't know. It gives an air to a larger business. Now I have all those people, but I didn't for a long time. And my business card to this day does not say Camilla Bradley. It says Kim Miller, because when I was buying some silk from a wonderful factory in India, and the gentleman asked me what my name was, and I just said Camilla, and he never asked for a last name. And sure enough, I got all these beautiful silk samples. and it was addressed to not Camilla, but Kim Miller. Kim Miller. So I was like, this is brilliant. Nobody knows how to spell Camilla. I'll just be Kim Miller. So to this day, my business cards say Kim Miller. And it's wonderful because people think that the owner's Camilla and that Kim Miller, who's me, I'm the one that they have to deal with. And they'll sometimes tell me, when's Camilla going to do this? Or what do you think Camilla's, or what was that thing she did with her? Anyway, it was great because I get all the input. I'm like, oh yeah, that was not a good idea. So you get to be more than one person.
Also, like everyone has different meaning everyone has like different definition for success. So what does actually success mean for Camilla Bradley?
So wonderful question. I was asked once what makes me do what I do. And I realized that whether I was designing clothing or writing books or teaching kindergarten or designing book bindings, whatever it is, I get my inspiration out of inspiring others. So if I have made a woman feel more feminine, more alluring, more fun, if I have changed her day in any way because of something that I've made that she has put on, I like my clothing to be like not constricted, like high heels, women walk around like this. Like, I don't want any of my clothes to be high heels, high heels. I want them to be free and fun. And so if I can change how a woman feels when she puts on a dress or a pair of pants, or elevate her mood, or make her do a cartwheel, or skip to her dinner, it can happen. You're looking at me like I'm crazy, but if I can do that, then literally the inspiration I get from just changing somebody's day for the better is all I want, all I need. And so inspiring others is it. Success for me is hearing one person say, oh my God, I started my own business, or I'm inspired by you, I want to do this, or I never thought I could do this and now I do. With reference to our discussion today, talking to others, I love, because if I can inspire one person, it's just like if you have one professor in college inspire you, it can change your whole life. So that's it. Like, my success is if I have succeeded in inspiring others. Like, if I see a little girl, I want to bring her into my warehouse and show her what I do. And I show her that it can be done by anybody. Because you saw my drawings. Like, come on, people. If I can do this, like anybody can do it. It's just the passion and the story that, that comes out, I guess. Yeah.
We have like time for one last question. What advice you wish, there's another question on the chat, so I'm gonna like give chance for that one. Since Instagram and social media are so important for marketing, visibility, and etc., if it's for someone's strong suit, would you hire someone or do you do it all yourself?
Great question. So, and I say that because I constantly toy with this. I would absolutely hire the person that's good at it. When I think about, I used to do all the Facebook marketing myself. So creating the audiences, and those of you who have done that know what I'm talking about, like picking, somebody that likes, working out, or I'm trying to think of what my customer might like. Maybe they buy a J. Crew, maybe they buy a Tory Burch. So I might pick an audience that has people that like those things, right? Or mountain biking, or, sailboats. So then I create my lookalike audience, and then I try to get people to buy our stuff, creating these ads. I'm a creative person. I'm designing clothes. I'm drawing all these prints by hand. Like, at the end of the day, I don't want to be good at everything. I want to hire the people that are focused on that keep up to date with that. So very quickly, even though we could barely afford it, and I'm talking a few years ago, we could barely afford to outsource it because it was expensive to pay somebody else to do this. All day long. The benefits are huge. I would hire somebody all day long to do that. In fact, right now I'm in the process where we're actually trying to hire a full-time marketing person, because we all do little bits and pieces of it, but God, it's not being done. It's not being done the way it should be being done because we're too busy. And I absolutely say hire the experts. And, you make me think as I say that, hire the financial expert, because God only knows I need one of those too. But, half my brain isn't good enough. I need a full brain and somebody that's really schooled in that. And with social media and all that stuff changing so often, somebody that is just focused on that is vital, I believe, for a company that has a size that can handle that, right? When you're starting out, don't hire somebody else. That's a waste of money. Do it, I would say, do it yourself unless you're really bad at it. But so much of this has to be done by the entrepreneur in every aspect in the beginning, unless you have a lot of money to start, and then you can farm it out, which a lot of people do. They'll farm out the photographer, they'll farm out the model, they'll farm out, we still do all that stuff in house, and our models are the beautiful girls that work at the shop, and I do it sometimes just because I'm here. And social media, we're about to sort of try to help to get some people in to help us with that. But I think for me, being successful has been able to have my hands in all these pots and being able to do it decently till we get to a size where we can hire the professionals, which can be in-house or out of house.
Okay. We do have another question in the chat. How difficult would you say to enter the industry with your own idea when there is so much competition from other similar firms producing similar products?
Well, I think that's where you get to the differentiator, right? So if you just want to make something because you want to make your own stuff and have your own label, I mean, you're going to need a lot to make that stand out, right? And that's probably marketing dollars. And maybe you have friends, maybe you have influencers, maybe you have friends that won't ask you to get paid. So you've got the marketing connection, right? If you're going to do something that isn't different than what somebody else is doing, you better have something in your pocket, something in your quiver of tricks, which would be a connection to marketing that other people don't have, a connection to a famous person that can wear the stuff on a TV show that nobody has, something, or a lot of money. But if you don't have the money and you don't have these special connections, what you would need is a differentiator. What makes your product different? Or if your product's the same, is your story better? Or are you donating something to a charity or an organization that helps something? Then all of a sudden you're doing something different and you're doing something meaningful. When things have meaning, I mean, they can sell themselves. But if you're just trying to do it without that, you're going to miss the multi-dimensionality that I would think would help it just explode.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think now we have time for your final thoughts.
Oh, I'm supposed to have final thoughts.
Or I can ask you a question,
Yeah, no, I mean, my final thoughts really is just that there's no such thing as failing. You just have to keep trying. Mm-hmm. And God only knows I have made so many mistakes in this business. And it's like, I never went to business school. I never went to design school. It's like learning on the fly, learning by, just like a kid finds out that the stove is hot by touching it and gets burned. I find out that, I can't just buy something for $5 and sell it at 10. Like I need to work in a much bigger profit margin in order to keep my business alive. And it took 10 years for me to figure that out. So if there was advice that I would have wished somebody had told me, and maybe they did, but I was like, whatever, I'm doing fine. It would be to know the things you're not good at, and to make sure that you have consultants or people that are willing to give you that information. If you're not good at marketing, make sure you've got a friend that's good at marketing. If you're not financially savvy, like understand margins and net profits, gross margins, make sure you have somebody that's willing, or that you outsource or consult to give you the basics. I mean, I remember somebody gave me a basic Excel spreadsheet of, if my product costs this much with the zippers and the buttons and the labels and the da-da-da-da, then this is how much you wholesale it for, and this is how much you retail it for. If I didn't have that to start, and I had that back in 2002, I just didn't realize I had to multiply the margins a little bit more. That would have been very difficult. So that was like somebody gave me an Excel spreadsheet that really helped a creative-minded person make it in a starting a business that requires more than just creativity. It requires business, creativity, gumption, thinking on your toes, being ready for whatever comes your way, and like positivity and turning every negative thing into positive. Like it's great. I would be happy if people reached out to me and asked questions. I would love to answer them. It's like a real passion of mine to inspire anybody to start their own anything. So please reach out. I know my email may be shared.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Camilla, for your presentation, time and all. We really appreciate you for taking your time and be here for the event today with us. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Be active for the Q&A session. Please look for the post-event survey in an email tomorrow. And also, please join the Trinity Entrepreneur Network and complete your profile in the Bantam Career Network and follow up with Melissa if you have any question or if you want any additional information. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you, Trinity.
Thank you.